Hi everyone, it is Professor G again. I hope that everyone is doing well and is staying safe and is also having a good semester so far. This week, we are moving into our unit on utopic fiction and dystopic fiction. And we'll think a lot about how connected those two kinds of narratives are and whether we can actually separate them in any sort of confident way. All right, now in this video, I'm not going to do an overall survey of utopic fiction and dystopic fiction because you already have that information. At this point, we should have gotten a chance to read through that article on classic examples of dystopic fiction, and we should have also watched that short video about what dystopic fiction looks like. So I'm not going to be redundant, I'm not going to repeat any of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how this genre fits into the course and how it engages in a conversation with the other units that we have already had. So without any further ado, I'm going to put myself in my tiny little box in the corner, and I'm going to just highlight two main ways that this genre, this narrative form, fits into our course. All right, now the first thing I'm going to talk about is really in many ways about the premise of the course. We've talked about how fiction is a way of populating the world with what ifs. Right, so what if something happened? Then blank, right? Fiction becomes a way of making things hypothetical and following that kind of thought process. Now, dystopic fiction and utopic fiction thinks about this, and I'll put this up, I'll put it over here. Dystopic fiction and utopic fiction thinks about this on a social scale. Now, what I mean by that is that at this point, we've had a lot of stories that are about the individual, right? And that's usually at play in stories about utopias and dystopias, but they're almost always concerned with the larger picture. Very quick example, just to kind of show what I mean. If you've read or watched The Hunger Games, yes, Katniss Everdeen is at the center of it all. But in some ways, at least in my perspective, those stories are almost more interested in the society surrounding her and what has happened to that society than they are in her, right? So there's this big focus on the social, what has happened with the larger context for that individual. All right, so, and I think that that's true of a lot of utopic fiction and dystopic fiction, right? And the other thing I'll say in terms of how this works is that these are two extremes. So for utopic fiction, the goal here is figuring out how to answer the question, what if the society were perfect? What would that look like, right? And we have all different imaginings of this. And versions of utopic fiction have been around for hundreds of years, right? They have this really long history of people trying to imagine a perfect world. Now, for dystopic fiction, what if the society were imperfect? Or another way of putting the same question, but with a slightly different spin, what if the society's perfection were fake? Right? So what if what seems like a perfect society has a hidden secret, has a dark side? And that is what, in many ways, dystopic fiction is about. So these what ifs are on a social scale. They're big, they're kind of go big or go home. They tend to, like apocalyptic narratives, have these really high stakes. All right, so that's the first thing I want to bring up. The second thing I want to bring up, and this is just a way of kind of keeping the apocalyptic narratives as a part of our conversation. So, in many ways, dystopic fiction has the possibility of becoming an apocalyptic narrative. And I think this is an important point because as we move forward between the units, I think that we sometimes just kind of put the former unit aside and don't think about it anymore. But dystopic fiction and apocalyptic fiction are very much connected to each other. They're not totally the same. They have slight differences here and there, but there is very much a way in which dystopic fiction can very quickly become a narrative about the end of the world, right? If that understanding, if that image of that imperfect society can get so bad as to infect everything around it. All right, now I'm going to come back out of my bubble. Those are the two main things I wanted to say in terms of how I think this unit fits into the course and everything that we've looked at so far and read so far. And you very well will come up with other connections. I didn't hit everything. I just talked about a couple of quick things that occurred to me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you made of these stories and getting to hear everyone's ideas on Canvas. And I hope that you enjoy this new genre and getting to think about it.